Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video on the MFT YouTube channel. I'm Mindy Eggen, and in today's video I'm going to be creating a Halloween card by stretching my stamps a little bit. I'm taking a stamp set that you wouldn't normally think of as Halloween and adding it into a Halloween scene. I have here images that are stamped out in the MFT Extreme Black ink. The images come from Ghostly Greetings, which is the pumpkin and the bats, and then I have this really fun image from Hanging with My Gnomies. Now, originally, when I thought of this, I kind of wanted more of a spooky Halloween gnome is what I was going for, but as I was coloring it, it kind of turned into a wizard. I guess it might have been the beard, or maybe it was because I chose purples, but to me now he kind of looks like a wizard, and that still works for the theme of my card. I just thought it was a really fun way to take an image that maybe wasn't intended for Halloween, and just by changing up my colors, I can add it into whatever scene or theme I'm going for. So as usual, I have all of the colors listed at the top of the screen that I'm using for each area. I had started with the purples, the BVs for the outfit. I did the skin tones, and then I'm going to work on the beard a little bit. And this I know can always be tricky when coloring a beard. For me anyway, I use the W's, which is W4, W3, and W1. And I'm starting at the bottom of the beard and just flicking up a little bit with that darkest color and continuing those lines with the other two colors I have to kind of smooth out that transition. I do go back in with that W4 to kind of darken it a little bit, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. It doesn't look dirty to me, which is sometimes the results I get when I'm trying to color the facial hair. So I have the boots and the belt. I used N8 and N4. And then just a dab of yellow, and I'll have that yellow into the eyes of the pumpkin. So Y19 with a little bit of shadow area of Y26. And for the stem, I have G14, G05, and G17. You could skip one of those colors. I was just trying to achieve that shadow area that I wanted. Onto the pumpkin that I have, I'm using YR18, YR07, YR04, and YR02 for the lightest area. The YR02, that lightest color, I did keep to the very outside edge of the pumpkin and then also in the middle. And I did come back in and deepen those up just a little bit. Once everything is colored, I'm going to take some scissors and actually trim these down into some smaller areas to work with. I plan on using my mini die cutting machine so I can just have it right there on my table. So I just cut these into some smaller pieces that will fit through there. It's about a 3-inch area that I have to work with the plates. Then I can just line up the coordinating dies, hold them in place with Post-it tape, and run them through that mini die cutting machine. This is just really handy to have on my desk when I don't feel like going across the room to my regular die cutting machine. Then using some smooth white cardstock and the rectangle trio stencil, I'm going to line this up, and I wanted the lines to be going horizontal across the card. So I'm lining up about where I want them to be, holding it in place from the back with some Post-it tape, and then I'm going to work on ink blending, starting with the Wilted Violet Distress Oxide ink, starting off very slow on one side, blending it in about a quarter of the way, and then I'll come in with the chipped sapphire and add the chipped sapphire, kind of blending that into the Wilted Violet. And I will be bringing in black soot, but I'm going to use the black soot distress ink because the oxides are a little bit muted. They're kind of more chalkier. And the black soot distress ink is really nice and dark, which is what I wanted on that far end. Now, if you want to, you could mask off the bottom portion of your cardstock in case you're worried about getting any excess ink over there. I did start with a piece of the smooth white cardstock as 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I typically will trim my card fronts down, so this gives me that kind of wiggle room to be able to do that if I was off center when applying my stencil, which I was. So that gives me that leeway to kind of trim off any extra areas. After I have trimmed this down into a smaller panel, I'm loading this into my Misty tool and lining up a sentiment off of the Ghostly Greetings stamp set. Once I have that lined up nice and straight, I can stamp that with the MFT Extreme Black ink. After the sentiment is stamped, I'm going to kind of mask off this area a little bit where the sentiment is, whether it's a piece of paper towel or some extra cardstock. And then I'm taking some clean water and I'm just going to spritz that area. Since the oxides react with water, this is just going to add a little bit of interest to the background, giving those kind of white splatter looks. And then I just dab that excess water up with a paper towel. To add dimension to my card panel, I cut 4 more pieces of cardstock that are the same size as this card front, and I'm adding it to a piece of gray cardstock. So just using my tape runner, which is a really nice strong adhesive, and this is going to have that really nice margin around the sides of my front panel. Now, I always kind of play with my images a little bit on my card front, make sure that I know where I want them to go. And then I'm just going to add tape runner to the back of the bats and the pumpkins and using my tweezers to apply those. I almost always use my tweezers so that way my fingers get out of the way and I could see exactly where I'm placing my bats. And then also that pumpkin, which is going to go behind my gnome. So I will add tape runner to that pumpkin as well. And the gnome itself, I will pop up with a little bit of adhesive. So I put some foam squares behind the gnome. And then I can line that up on the front of the card as well. So this is just a really fun way to kind of change up the theme of your card or your stamp sets just by changing the color or even adding some pattern paper over their clothing. That would change up your scene as well. I hope you enjoyed today's card and it has inspired you to take a look at your stamp sets and create. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.